Ready? Okay. Okay. Can we start?
We can just trim it.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Shakespeare, and today my persuasive speech is called Ignorance is Not Bliss. On my second day here at BYU, I was standing in line at Chick-fil-A, and as I was carefully deciding what I wanted from the menu, I felt a strange feeling on the back of my head. In a split second, I knew exactly what was going on. Someone was touching my hair. As I slowly turned around to see what was going on, I heard the simple phrase, "Can I touch your hair?" leave a girl's mouth, as if she didn't already have her hand fully immersed in my perfectly styled head of curls anyway. Of course, in that moment, there were so many thoughts going through my mind, like, who does she think she is? Is this really happening right now? And the one thing that I really wanted to say was, please get your hands out of my hair. Instead of saying any of those things, what came out of my mouth was completely different. Instead, I just forced a smile and said, well, you're already doing it, so I guess. Many times we go through our lives doing and saying things that offend other people, and this happens simply out of ignorance, the lack of knowledge. There's a significant amount of ignorance surrounding Black history, and this is directly because of the lack of Black history in our education in our schools today. Today, I'm going to share with you some ignorance around Black history education, the amount of Black history education we have in our society and schools today, and the importance of acceptance and understanding of other races in our society today. Hopefully, by the end of this, I can help you realize why we need to implement more Black history education in our public school systems. You know the saying, ignorance is bliss. Well, have you ever wondered what this means? According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, this phrase is said to emphasize that sometimes you're better off if you don't know all the facts. Roughly over a couple of weeks ago, I put out a survey asking questions regarding people's level of Black history education. As I was wanting people to share their efforts of expressing diversity, I asked the question, how can we include more diversity at BYU? I was thoroughly surprised when I received one response that said, and I quote, "Sis, you are not African, you are Jamaican. And you need to stop acting like this because it's driving all of your friends insane." My first thought after reading this response was, well, I guess all this time I thought I was Black. Guess I'm just Jamaican. Truth is, after reading this comment, I felt small. I felt belittled. These few words made me think that I was an annoyance just because I enjoy sharing who I am, where I come from, and the color of my skin. I wouldn't wish this feeling upon anyone. And at this moment in time, I wanted that person to feel the same way that I did so they could see that it's not okay to minimize someone because of their culture, especially if they're not educated in it in the first place. I am African. According to the National Library of Jamaica.gov, approximately 600,000 slaves were brought from the West African region to Jamaica between 1533 and 1807. My father's side of the family comes directly from these people, with an ancestry line made up of 62% Nigerian, 20% Cameroon, Congo, and Southern Bantu peoples, 7% Benin and Togo, 4% Mali, and 2% Ghana. The comment saying that I wasn't African was clearly made out of ignorance. But could we argue that in this situation, ignorance was bliss? I say no. There are times that this phrase, ignorance is bliss, could be acceptable. For example, ignorance is bliss for a person who is afraid of spiders, but isn't aware that one is living in the corner of their bedroom. This type of ignorance is not acceptable because it could easily be avoided with more Black history education in our schools. In my survey, I asked people if they celebrated Black History Month in their schools. The majority of the people answered with no or kinda. I then followed up by asking where they were from and if this might have been a factor in the amount of Black history education that they received. Most people answered yes, and then proceeded to say that Black History Month celebrations were mainly dependent on the racial populations of their schools. Those schools that had more racial diversity, even beyond Black and white students, were more prone to celebrating Black History Month. Those schools that had a small Black population didn't usually celebrate because it didn't seem like a priority, or it wasn't in the teacher's best interest. This also varied by the teacher. In most of our public schools, the history of the U.S. begins with the arrival of the Pilgrims to North America and then the establishment of the 13 colonies. It quickly covers the American Revolution, and then comes the hit or miss section of the Civil War. This is the part where students are provided with a brief rundown of an African American experience, taking note that Abraham Lincoln was the president that freed the slaves. I use quotations because this was not the case until many years later. Because of this slight overview of African American history, the whole group of people is introduced and remembered by referencing slavery. Those great names like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth are then quickly followed up by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, skipping the entire Reconstruction era. To quote an article from PBS.org, to make up for the lack of education that we have about the African American culture in our schools, it became widely acceptable to cram all of the cool stuff about African Americans into only 1 month of the year, but also into the shortest month of the year, which is then widely overshadowed by Valentine's Day. At the end of the day, we're only exposed to a small fraction of Black history in our school systems. This is limiting our knowledge of African American heritage and possibly preventing most African Americans, or Americans in general, from forming a healthy idea of Blackness. Now, many people come to BYU hoping for a place that they can be spiritually uplifted. A place where they can be accepted in their beliefs, along with who they are as a person. This includes their race. As I sent out my survey, I asked people if they would enjoy more diversity at BYU. 70% of the people said yes, and 16% answered maybe, and the remaining 4% answered no. I then asked people why they answered yes, and one response made me very, very hurt and surprised. It said, "I would like more diversity at BYU because I don't have a safe space anymore." In John 13:34, it says, "A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another." We are commanded to love one another, just as our Savior loves us. As brothers and sisters, it's our job to make each other feel comfortable and accepted. It's time to make a stand now, as even when we're interviewed for ecclesiastical endorsements to continue our education here at BYU, we're asked the question, do you respect others? Obviously, this is a fairly easy question to answer, but what would happen if we were asked the question, do you love your neighbors? It's easy to say that I respect my professors or the random person sitting in my American Heritage class, but it's another thing to fully open your heart to those who are around you and show the type of undying love for others, the same love that our Savior showed for us. I hope that today you were able to see the importance of Black history education as I've talked about the ignorance surrounding it, the amount of Black history education that we have in our schools, and the importance of acceptance and understanding in our society. Many times we go through our daily lives doing and saying things that offend other people, and this happens simply out of ignorance, the lack of knowledge. My friends, please join me as I say, ignorance is not bliss.